For the following exercises, A, find the inverse function, and B says find the domain and range of the inverse function. So first off, we're going to find the inverse functions. So if you look below here, we're going to start with problem 190, and I'm just going to write that below. So here's 190, and that's f of x equals cube root of x minus 4. So what we're going to do next is we're just going to write y in place of the f of x, because we know that's the same thing when we're talking about graphs. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to swap the x and the y. And the reason for that is because when I'm talking about inverses, I swap the domain and range. So, and domain is all my x values. The range is all my y values. So I'm just going to swap those variables. And then what I'm going to do next is solve for y. So now the first thing I'm going to do here is cube both sides. So I'm going to get x to the cubed on the left, and on the right those cancel. I'm just going to get an y minus 4. And to finish solving this thing, I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So my y is going to actually equal x to the third power plus 4. And there's my inverse function for the function of f of x equals cube root of x minus 4. So now that's part A. So I'll say A is this. There's my answer. And again, don't forget, remember, all of this is important. So I guess I should be careful to not make you think that all you need is the bottom piece of information. All of this is necessary for full credit. All right, so part B now says, find the domain and range of the function. So we're going to do this by just looking at the original function, f of x. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a quick graph. I'm not sure if you know what this graph is or not, but the cube root graph is this. And that's what my cube root function is. Now what's going on is when I have an x minus 4, that means I'm moving to the right 4. So in essence, I'm just doing this. So then I can say, there's my 4. But again, now if I look at the domain of this, I go all the way left and I go all the way right and everything in between. So my domain of the original, and I'll just write D, is from negative infinity to infinity. And then for the range, my range is how high and how low I go. And I go all the way down and all the way up and everything in between, so the range is the same as the domain. So for part B, when we're talking about the inverse functions, the domain and range, we swap these. So now my domain's going to be the range, and my range is going to be the domain. That's how that works when we talk about inverses, but they're the same, so we're not really going to see a difference here. This is just going to be what we have down here. Okay, now let's take a look at the next problem here, and that's going to be 194. Let me get this out of here. So again, as you can see, part B, if I know the graph, which those are graphs hopefully we're getting down, help a lot when I'm talking about finding the domain and range of the inverse. All right, so for the 194, I have f of x equals 1 over x plus 2. So now I just do the same thing. So it's going to be y equals 1 over x plus 2. Swap my domain and range. So that's going to be 1 over y plus 2. So now I have to solve for x, not solve for x, but solve for y. So I multiply both sides by y plus 2. And on the left side, I get xy plus 2x. And on the right side, those cancel. I just get 1. So now I'm going to move the 2x over. So this is going to be xy equals 1 minus 2x. And then I'm going to divide by x, both sides. So my y equals 1 minus 2x over x. Now, let's talk about the original function now for part B. So there's my part A. I should have A here. Now for part B, let's take a look at the function. So hopefully we know what this function is, and if you don't, that's okay. We know if we had the 1 over x function that it would do this. So what's happening here is this is going to shift to the left to 2. Because I put a negative 2 in there, that's what makes it 0. So what happens here is this piece right here, oops, too much. This piece right here is going to move over 2. This piece down here is also going to move over 2. So then we have this asymptote down the middle here, and that's at negative 2. And that's what happens here. So if I look at my domain of this function here, my domain is going to be all the values except negative 2. So it's going to go from negative infinity to negative 2 union negative 2 to infinity. And then my range, notice the range here, how far up and how far down I go, and everything in between. The only thing that's missing here is this asymptote here at the x-axis, which is y equals 0. So it's actually where it's 0 at. So this is going to be negative infinity to 0 union 0 to infinity. Now remember what that meant here. If we're talking about the inverse, we're going to swap those. So I should give myself a little bit more room down here. I think I'll have enough right below. So my domain then is going to be negative infinity to 0 union 0 to infinity. And my range then is going to be negative infinity, comma, 2, negative 2, excuse me, union negative 2 to infinity. So there's our answers for both of these problems here. And again, we're using those ideas of inverses, swapping domain and range to actually find the inverses. That's why we swap our x and our y. And then also to think about the original function, swapping that domain and range to get the domain and range of the inverses.